To this regular meeting of the Sahuarita Unified School District Governing Board. We are going to open tonight with a public hearing for the adoption of the 2022-23 expenditure budget and truth in taxation. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. Reese, members of the board and public. As required by Arizona state law and corresponding statutes, we are presenting this evening information about the adopted budget that will be recommended formally for adoption later in the meeting. And as was mentioned, in accordance with truth in taxation requirements, a similar communication in regards to adjacent ways. So at this time, I turn it over to my colleague, Mrs. Huey, our CFO, who will make the presentation. Lizette?
Thank you, Dr. Valenzuela, District Administration, Governing Board, and community. Thank you for having me tonight. To say that it's been a busy summer is an understatement, especially with all the changes that have been going on. So I wanted to go through this PowerPoint and explain a little bit about what has changed and why. So the next slide, please. Normally, the proposed budget doesn't change from the adopted budget. However, with the new legislative session, our governing board meeting was on June 22nd, and literally the next day is when all the changes came into effect. So there was no way for us to add any of these corresponding changes to our proposed budget. So I thought I would take the time to go through this and explain all the changes legislatively and then how it impacted our budget. So first I'll start with the legislation passed the K-12 state budget. And what it did, I'll go through each of those items. So the base support level did increase by $384.62, which we're really grateful for. The teacher comp, meaning that we used to have a calculation that we can add in our teacher comp of 1.25. That went away this year. And so basically what that does is it changes the formula to roughly about $56 less on the base formula. But again, it got adjusted with the base support. For transportation, there was an increase to the rate for our transportation cost, and that was an increase of 5 cents. Not all sped weight costs went up. I know that there was some discussion about all of our sped allocations that were going to increase. There was a specific weight that did increase, that does impact our budget, and that did increase by 0.199. Also, our district additional assistance did receive some increases, and that is for the preschool through 8th grade receive now $51.57 increase. And then our DAA, which is our district additional assistance, does receive a little bit more of an increase as well for high school students. And that equates to $56.39. Next slide is the legislative changes, and the only reason for this is because all of the calculations that we discussed last board meeting in regards to all the formulas that are entailed in the budget, the proposed budget does not show that any of the RCL, which is the revenue control limit, district additional assistance, and M&O didn't have any reflection to what has been passed with the legislative session. So with the adopted, all of these formulas did get changed because of what I just explained in the previous slide. So what does that mean for our budget? Next slide. So here is our revenue control limit, and like I mentioned before, normally the proposed budget does not change at all from the adopted. So because of this, we did the recalculations all over again, and thankfully we did receive the revenue control limit. We can increase our budget to a revenue control limit because of our base revenue, and that equation, it equates to $2,646,174. Additionally, because our base revenue control limit is how it's calculated for our override of a 14% override that our taxpayers voted on to allow for the additional amount to our budget. That increased as well by $359,492 for a total adjustment to our maintenance and operation budget limit increase of $5,666. The next slide indicates the changes to our district additional assistance. The main factor was mainly the preschool adjustments, preschool to 8th grade, and then the high school grade levels. So we were able to add $330,303 to our district additional assistance. Next is our truth in taxation. Basically, what this means is that we have an ability, the governing board has the ability to add adjacent ways to their budget. They are for specific reasons, and the improvements that would be used for the items that would be used for these monies basically is very restricted, and it has to, once the project is over $50,000, those projects do have to go before the school facilities oversight board before we can go ahead and we'd have to get a review from them just to make sure that it's in compliance with adjacent ways. But in your board packet, I did add all of the items that we can in detail so that you can see all the requirements that we have to do for adjacent ways. What does that mean to our budget? The next slide, please. So the budget is, for the budget, we're requesting that we add the $1,500,000 for adjacent ways purposes. And the purposes for these projects are for the utility connections, Walden Grove emergency lane, and our transportation emergency access. The cost to our taxpayers is $37.62 on a $100,000 home. The reason why we use $100,000 is just because it's for easy calculation, so people understand what their home usually is valued for, and so the $100,000 comes in. We're not saying that the homes cost $100,000, but that's just an easy calculation that people can do for their own taxes. The good news is that the average taxpayer will not see an increase to the overall tax rate. And the reason for that is because the governing board did decide and made a good fiscally responsible decision to refund prior debt. So we paid off a lot of the old debt that we had, which allowed us some savings for our taxpayers. The net result, including the adjacent ways, results in a net decrease for the total tax rate for next year. So that is expected to go down. And with that finalizes my presentation for the hearings of both the adjacent ways and the budget. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Valenzuela.
Thank you, Mrs. Huey. And I'll just add a few more insights, or maybe just perspectives from my lens. As Lizette mentioned, I think it is important to reinforce is that the only changes, and I would call them favorable changes, are changes that have emerged from the legislative process. And I would say publicly, and I've said it to some individual legislators in recent days, that it's refreshing to see our elected officials, our legislators, striving toward bipartisanship, finding common ground, D's and R's, working together to do what's right. I will say that speaking professionally, personally, there are some parts of the budget that I don't agree with, but that's not the point. The point is, what do we have in common that we can advance for the greater good? What are the shared purposes that we're here for? So the budget is favorable. It's frankly one of the more favorable budgets that we've received in my career. I can tell you that. In terms of the impact, like Lizette said, if you kind of do the math and add up the pluses, it's an increase in budget capacity of about a little over $3 million more dollars for us. And that, as she outlined, basically, it's a significant increase on the base, with also addition to other categories with some restrictions, including some special education weights, something that's called an opportunity weight, which has to do with unique needs based on the National School Lunch Program, poverty indicators, things like that, and also capital. I think you mentioned the TRSL, the transportation. The thing also to note is that when you have these kind of outcomes, it's important to be very intentional, very thorough in the decision-making about how to deploy those resources, whether it's going to be development of new programs, expansions of existing programs, addressing objectives like class sizes. Those are things that you need to do thoughtfully. This evening on the budget, the only thing that, as you saw, is reflected is that on the corresponding budget lines aligned with those legislative outcomes, there are changes. So on the budget, I think that was about it. Again, just to reinforce on the statute in regards to the adjacent ways. Adjacent ways is a piece that has been in the law for many, many years. It's specifically outlined in State Law 15995, and it basically says that a governing board may construct, maintain, or improve a public way that's adjacent by doing things like constructing sidewalks, sewers, utility lines, roadways, those types of improvements to pay for access in the periphery of the properties. In a nutshell, what that means, and I guess you'd call it in layman's terms, is you have the ability to assess a levy that's designed to address largely safety and or health-related objectives in the periphery related to infrastructure and critical utilities. As Lizette mentioned, and I'll just give you a little more specific detail in regards to these projects. We have a wastewater system that is connected to the town, but that currently requires the pumping of the wastewater uphill to a point that it can then be deposited and go on its merry way to the treatment plant. We had a situation in the summer, as the board's aware, where the pump broke down, and we were able to recover and monitor, adjust, and most people didn't even know. But this is a step forward in the effectiveness of our system, that in collaboration with the town of Sahuarita, we would take those sewer lines and reroute them so that we don't even need that pump. We would shut down that pump, and we would just take the wastewater in a direct feed to the town's existing system. So that's a necessary improvement. The other one is over at Walden Grove. As you know, Walden Grove has, in general, one way in and one way out. And in terms of managing and continuing to develop and improve safety situations, this would improve a roadway that has been around a long time. We would affectionately refer to it as the runway, because it was a runway for training pilots during World War II. But it's not in good shape, but we want to make it to be a more functional roadway, to where we could use it for things like emergency access, emergency vehicles, emergency evacuations, things like that. And similarly, in line with these objectives, in the transportation area, transportation emergency access. So, that's an area that also is really important. There's fire access spaces there, fire hydrants. As you know, we have a pretty large tank for fueling those big yellow buses and those white vehicles. So this would help address some of the emergency access needs of that greater space. As Lizette mentioned, it's about $37. By the way, that's per year. That per year for that amount. And again, it varies based on your individual house. But as she said, for multiple reasons, we, in good faith, believe that people's taxes will still go down. And the reason for that is, A, collaboratively, our entire community is continuing to grow, make progress, and thrive. So there's more people paying taxes. The assessed value is going up. The other thing is that I would give credit to Lizette and her fiscal management of our finances. We have a significant amount of savings, and there's a reason for that, so that we don't have to stretch our expenditures and create such strain or extend ourselves beyond what we absolutely have to. The other thing, like she said, is we strategically refinance a pretty significant amount. I want to say like $20 million of our old debt that, and God bless her, she got it at the very low time. We got like significant reductions in our interest rate, which saved us a lot of money. So we can add these additional value-added services to our community that I think you would agree are related to safety. They're related to health. And we don't anticipate when people get their tax bill that their rate's going to go up. In fact, it will modestly go down. So with that, I think I complete my comments. There is no action item at this particular time, but thank you for allowing me as well to share a few comments.
All right. And then does anyone have any questions for either Ms. Huey or Dr. Valenzuela? Okay.
The emergency access over at Walden, is the intent to have it prepped and ready in the event that you need it, or is it to be used on a regular basis as a second entry?
We don't anticipate that it's going to be like a secondary thoroughfare or change the basic circulation. What we do anticipate is, if it's a more functional road that's in better condition, we can target the uses for effectiveness, for events, in a way that we haven't really done so right now, just because the road's in such horrible shape. So it'll expand the use, but it's not anticipated to be a thoroughfare by any means.
Dr. V, would it be similar to what we have as the back loop here and the main campus for our buses
It's a great,
and
that's,
emergency?
it's a great, I would say that that's a good analogy conceptually of kind of where we're at kind of right now.
Right, for Walden Grove.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to clarify, because ultimately that road was the entrance for the Sweatlands Building Park under the county occupation, with the county
Yes, sir.
control. So it really wasn't a road ever. It was kind of a long driveway. And it was in pretty bad shape back before it was kind of granted over to us to manage and take care of and be able to use that park area.
Yes,
I'm
sir.
just saying that I can
No,
remember.
that's an accurate statement, and we've both been around here long enough to remember those times.
I can remember the county filling potholes like 13 years ago because it was so bad, but that's all I've ever seen done out there. So.
That's an accurate statement.
And I just wanted to reiterate that it is this 1 year because these funds have to be generated within this fiscal year. So it'll be just the 1 year for that amount.
That's a very good point. This is not an ongoing
It's not.
levy. And I will say that historically, generally, I can speak historically about this district. And by that, I mean the history as far back as I can remember it, which is 17 years. I recall that in the first part of that time frame that I remember, the levying of adjacent ways was a pretty regular event. That's just a fact.
Correct.
In the more recent 10 years that I can recall of my superintendency, we've been very intentional about not levying adjacent ways, unless we have legitimate, targeted, specific projects that fit the purposes of adjacent ways. So to Lizette's point, this is a one-time thing unless there's evidence to suggest that the levying for these purposes is warranted again. But we haven't levied it for several years.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then we will go ahead and move into the regular meeting and call the meeting to order. Welcome, and go ahead and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Moving into the roll call, Ms. Palacios.
Governing Board President Denise Reese.
Here.
Governing Board Clerk Dr. John Sparks.
Here.
Governing Board Member Sherry Lowell, absent. Governing Board Member Kevin Opalka. Governing Board Member Nicole Warner. Here. District Administration Superintendent Dr. Manuel Valenzuela.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Scott Downs.
Present.
Assistant Superintendent Brett Bonner.
Here.
Chief Financial Officer Lisette Huey.
Here. Thank you very much. Moving on to the approval of the agenda, Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Reese, members of the board and public, you have in your packet a draft copy of, I'm sorry, I almost did it like last time. This is the agenda, not the minutes. I recommend approval of the agenda as it was presented in its revised form.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Approval of the minutes, Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Now I will move into the approval of the minutes. And I will say that in your packet, you do have a draft copy of the minutes from the regularly scheduled meeting of the board back on June 22nd, 2022. And after your review and consideration, I do recommend approval at this time.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Ratification of the vouchers, Ms. Huey.
Good evening. Tonight, I recommend payroll vouchers 25.1 through ratification number 26 and new payroll number 4 for pay period ending August 19, 2022 for total payroll approval of $6,011,341.70. Next, I recommend expense vouchers 1095 through 1098 and new expense vouchers 1113 all the way through 1016 for new expense vouchers total of $16 million and a grand total of both ratification of payroll and new vouchers of $22,439,886.85.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Superintendent reports. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese. I have just a few points to highlight that, to me, if I could summarize it, they just point out the Sahuarita wins spirit, the Sahuarita wins way. And that is a finding common ground across different sectors. As you see, those are probably some of the nicest electrical utility boxes that you will ever see anywhere, let alone in Pima County. But our students and our teachers and our community shines again. Of course, this is the Transportation Art by Youth program that's a staple in our community in collaboration with the town of Sahuarita, Pima Association of Government, and the Sahuarita Unified School District. This is just a sampling of some of the work that they've done. As has been customary, we will be inviting John Garcia, Daniel Rutherford, and Joseph Poor, the members of the faculty that are leading this, to tell us about this year's projects, but there is a little sampling. Similarly, again, in that Sahuarita Win spirit, I wanted to show you a picture. Those two young men are Josh and Jackson Pitridge, and they are students in the JTED Heating, Ventilating, and Air Conditioning program. They've completed that program at the high school level. They've now graduated and are moving on to Pima College. And the good folks there from Green Valley Heating and Cooling and the Sahuarita Green Valley Chamber, all these different sectors, got together and provided these young men with a scholarship so that they can go to Pima College, finish the rest of their credentialing to be licensed as HVAC technicians. According to Josh Fields, our CTE director, they're really close. They only need a few more classes, and then they'll be highly marketable and highly able to meet service needs, hopefully in our community. Maybe Green Valley Heating and Cooling will hire them back. But that's really that win-win spirit that we're so proud of. And speaking of proud, the last thing I want to share with you is, and we take these for granted, but we shouldn't. This is Association of School Business Official International. So this is the International School Business Officials Group, presents to Sahuarita Unified School District the coveted Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting. This is specifically for the Annual Comprehensive Financial Report for the fiscal year that ended 2021, for demonstrating best practices and excellence in financial reporting. So Lizette, I'll pass this on to you, but I just want to let you know how proud we are of you and of your entire team for keeping us focused on true north in this regard. So that's all for me. Thank you so much.
Right. All right. Thank you so much. Moving on to the governing board reports. Dr. Sparks.
I'll go ahead and pass this evening. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Alpaca.
Nothing to report.
Okay. Ms. Werner.
No report.
Okay. And I also don't have a report this evening, so that was easy. We will move on to call to the public. Do we still, okay, we will move past call to the public. New business, instruction, the fiscal year 2023 truth and taxation. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. President Reese, members of the board. At this time, I would recommend approval of the levying of $1.5 million of adjacent ways in accordance with Arizona statute as outlined in 15995 and as presented this evening by Mrs. Huey for the legally allowable functions.
Okay. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on to the adoption of the expenditure budget for fiscal year 2022-23. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. As the board is aware and for the communication to the public, the board is required to adopt an expenditure budget for the upcoming fiscal year before July the 15th. Today it is July 7th. And so at this point, I do recommend the board's adoption of the expenditure budget for fiscal year 22-23 as presented this evening by our CFO, Mrs. Huey.
Okay, we have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? From my point of view, I just want to say thank you for being able to be so reactive to the late finishing of the state legislature and being able to make those adjustments so that we at least are able to start the school year or start the next fiscal year, kind of knowing where we're at and things like that, and be in a position to where we can start looking at what changes we have the capacity to make and evaluating programs expansion or continuing on whatever it is that we need to do next. So thank you very much for being able to be so reactive to that.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to serve. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. The public online auction items. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Once again, there's a list of items that have been designated for public auction. And after your review of the list, I'd recommend your authorization of these items to be treated as such.
Okay. We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Next item is the RFQ 2022-1 for architectural services. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. As the board is aware, and again for the communication to the public, the Sahuarita Unified School District pursued and received funding from the School Facilities Board under the SFP process for funds that it qualified for, specifically to address space issues at the high school level. Basically, we received $18 million to expand those facilities. And in support of that project, and also in association with related projects that may take place in proximity of the same allowable time frame, we went through a comprehensive process as is required by law, and I will shortly turn the mic over to my colleagues, Mr. Downs and Mrs. Huey. But there's a process to deploy these funds, and one of the first steps is to identify architectural services. So we put out an RFQ, and if you've seen it, it's meticulous, it's methodical, it has multiple steps, it has multiple people looking at it, it's all got to be documented, there's timelines. So they went through this entire process. And this evening, after I asked for comments from Mr. Downs and Mrs. Huey, I'm prepared to make a recommendation in regards to the identified firm for this RFQ. Scott, was that?
Yeah, I'll just mention a couple of things. One, the indicated or selected firm or recommendation to Dr. Valenzuela was Swayman Associates. You might recognize their name because they've done many projects for us before. And one might think, well, Swayman Associates, they got it before, and they're in cahoots with SUSD. This is the first school facilities board project that I've been involved in. It's always been local money. And I'm appreciative of that process. In our RFQ selection process, we had 5 members that were on the board. One was Lizette Huey, one was Ramon Andrade, Director of Facilities, one was myself, and 2 were really outside people from our organization. One was the town engineer, and one was our school facilities board liaison helping us pick the architect. To me, it is no surprise that Swayman Associates got picked as the overall one. In school facilities, Mr. Bill DeArmond, he's our liaison. He highly recommends Swayman Associates. Swayman Associates is known for building schools in Arizona. So not only did he suggest that, but all of our committee members, the town engineer, everybody had recommended Swayman Associates. The point to their interest in doing good things for schools is when they first submitted their application, not knowing many of the details of the project, they came in and said we can do it for about 7%. And in talking with Kevin a little bit before we got to this award process, I said, is there any way that you could bring it down? Because our philosophy was, well, if there's anything that we can do to save money, let's try to save money. In speaking with the school facilities board, they said, well, if you could get around 6.5%, that would be great. So I called up Kevin. I said, can you guys come out? We kind of look at this a little bit, and Kevin said, absolutely. What are you kind of looking at? I said, well, I know, anytime you're adding on to a building, and connecting to things, it's always like, working with an old house sometimes. You don't know what you're going to get into. So they kind of came in and did some preliminary investigation, seeing what they could do. And I'm happy to say with the basic services that they provide, they didn't come in at 6.5%. They came in at 6.29%. That overall savings is $100,000 back to the district. So the proof is in the pudding when they submitted, and we said, is there any way you can get down to 6.5%? From what they did, they got down to about 6.29% on the basic services. We are asking them to do some other type of services like building permits and things that they will do for us. So to me, that was proof that, they're not in it for the profit. They want to build a quality product. They want to do something well for us. So I was really happy and pleased when I ran the numbers. And we came in at 6.29%, which was better than what School Facilities Board had suggested that we could probably settle around. So I'm really appreciative of their work on trying to do the best job they can for us. I'm excited that they're back should you approve it, and looking forward to getting started.
Is that?
I just wanted to add that the RFQ process, which is the request for qualifications, is a very extensive process that we have to do for procurement purposes. It starts with the advertisement, and we started the advertisement back in March of 2022, and it has to, quote unquote, stay on the streets for at least a good period of time. In this case, it was due on April 22nd, so it was almost roughly about a month that it was on the streets for people to bid on. We did receive 7 companies who responded to our RFQ, and we ended up interviewing 3, is that right? Three companies. And so basically it's like the second round. So we go through the formal process, we look at all of the qualifications, and they're very extensive. If you looked at the packet, it does include the scope of work, all of the things that are required by procurement purposes, and they have to be very detailed. So we had the 7 companies, we interviewed 3, the interviews took place on May 5th, and then we go through negotiations with whoever we pick. Then we go into negotiations like Mr. Downs mentioned about the cost and things of that nature. And so I just wanted to reiterate the timeline between when you put it out in the street on March 25th, 2022, then we did the final interviews on May 5th, 2022, and it took us a few weeks to then go through all of the process, go through the cost and the finals, the best and final offers to come down to today. So I'm very proud of the process. I think that we had a great committee with lots of questions and lots of feedback. And I also wanted to extend Florence Lopez, who is our procurement specialist and from our office. She really is the one that had embedded all of the background too. She has a strong background in procurement and really put this together for us. So she scrutinized it and dotted all of her I's and crossed all her T's. So I'm grateful for that. So I just wanted to extend that gratitude as well.
And I would just add, your greatest testimony in anything that you do is the outcomes that you've produced. And if you want to see their portfolio, all you got to do is walk across the street. Wrights and Ridge was designed by Swaim and Associates. The entire Copperview complex, so Copperview, the Aquatic Center, the Early Childhood Center. As was mentioned, the Swaim firm has kind of created a specialty in doing schools. Not only that, I would mention the value of the relationships. Kevin Barber, who's here this evening, has been the lead architect on all of those projects. And so we value that relationship. But I also wanted to stress the process was meticulous. And I saw the charts that are in your packet. It was by consensus. So we're very proud of the process. We're looking forward to this next step in the journey. And at this point, I would recommend the awarding of RFQ 2022-1 Architectural Services to Swayman Associates.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Madam President. I want to thank you for leading this process. And, I think sometimes it's easy to think, oh, well, they've done the last ones. But when only 3 groups actually submitted complete, fully instruction followed RFQs, right? It's like, at some point you have to kind of question, or so 3 only followed all the instructions, and they weren't. I just read through them. They weren't very difficult. I think, and then when you get down to it and you look at everybody's scores, and I don't think we realize everybody scores independently. It's not, they don't sit in a room and talk about it. Everybody looks at all the data and scores independently. And then I also know, just having been here a little while and seen them interact with the staff on our side, SRAM is pretty easy to work with. They're always looking to try to figure out how. The answer is yes, like how can we make it work? And I think in the world of building, especially in today's world of inflation in costs, inflation in time, just everything right now is more difficult. That ability is going to be more and more important than it ever has been. It's always been important, because I think that, the day the project starts and the day that actually shovel hits the ground, there's going to be radical changes in our environment, and because it's still happening and going on today. So I'm just grateful when I look through the data and I look at all the pieces and I look at all the responses that it's clear this was not just a selection. It was people went through the material and you interviewed everyone that submitted a full complete packet. So I think that's a reasonable and fair process. So I just appreciate it, and I mean, just having seen the outcomes in the past, I'm grateful. I'm supportive of the selection. So thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
I know I'm excited to, get the project going and see where we go. There's a lot of growth around town. There's lots of houses being constructed. And this is, a much needed expansion of our capacity at the, high school and that level. So very excited to see this.
Ms. Warner, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. From my behalf, I just, again, want to thank the committee. Again, I started going through the attachments to go through what this process looks like, and made the comment to myself that I was glad I didn't have to do it. It's extensive.
There's a lot of reading.
It's a lot of reading, and it's very extensive. And what we got on the tail end of it is extensive. And so just my absolute heartfelt gratitude to the individuals who served on that committee and anyone who helped with that process to put that through. And very grateful that we've got partners that can, that we're in a position to be able to make this offer to a partner that we've used before, but through a process that was objective and everything else. So just very grateful for the entire thing. So thank you. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. The International Alliance Group LLC host school agreement. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board. I don't think it's any secret to any of us in our professional life, regardless of where we work, the type of work we do, that for many reasons, there are emerging and growing challenges in regards to staffing, finding qualified people, and therefore maximizing the delivery of your mission, whatever that mission is. We've heard about airline cancellations, education field teacher shortages. Dr. Sparks, I know you're in the medical field. I'm sure it's the same there, nurses and others. So we're always looking to be ahead and to find creative solutions to the challenges that we face. And I must say, I believe that we do several things very well in this area. In the historical sense, I think the partnership that we've established with the University of Arizona and others for things like ICATS, where we train educators on site with faculty that is shared between our respective entities, has helped. I think the work that's done out of Mr. Bonner's office with new teacher induction programs, continuing support, mentoring programs, professional development throughout the course of the career, the efforts to create experiences and environments that are supportive through our beginning of the year kickoff assemblies, intramurals, the things we do to create an environment where we want the feeling tone to be pleasant and where people want to be, and with a community where people want to come and live and be a part of. So we're doing a lot of those things, but yet these are, in a way, uncharted waters in terms of magnitude. So we're always looking for new ideas. And this idea was presented to me by Mr. Downs in his search and in his work with this organization, International Alliance Group, which is affiliated with an organization that we're already working with for the Return to Work Post-Retirement Program, the ESI organization. But I wanted to stress the recommendation this evening is not about changing any of what we've done in terms of recruitment or retention. It's really about putting another tool in the belt of options. And specifically what we're looking to do is develop a process whereby hiring principals have the ability to tap another potential pool of talent, perhaps in a very unique niche, specialized situation, critical areas of need where we might be able to meet a need that we otherwise would not. Basically, what these folks do, this organization and their consultation, is they provide us with access to a pool of talent of qualified individuals who are authorized and properly processed to be able to work in the United States and be just like any other staff member. The difference is they're people from other countries. And you've heard other districts have been doing this kind of thing. Historically, we've kind of been careful, I think, because for many reasons, the workload, the legal costs, the operational costs have been really prohibitive, and I've always supported Scott on that because it's pretty evident that it wasn't, the return on investment wasn't there. However, by Scott's own recommendation, it seems like in this recommendation, this has changed. Scott, you want to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of this process and why you think this is a worthy opportunity that we should take advantage of?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. I appreciate the statement that Dr. Valenzuela has articulated, that this program is only another tool that the principals can use to find qualified candidates. I first want to say that our expectation of our teachers is not diminished by this process. These teachers will be fully vetted, they will be fully credentialized, they will be fingerprinted, we will do reference checks on them, we will do interviews. And so nothing has compromised other than giving us a tool of a new group of potential teachers that would come to our district. The agreement, which our attorney has gone through and vetted and changed and kind of cleaned up, and the company has agreed to it, basically says we employ teachers, they will be our employees. The nice part about this, is Dr. Valenzuela kind of alluded to it, is very expensive and very time consuming to bring teachers in from other countries and to deal with the visa paperwork and to have to sponsor it. And because of that, we've only done that once. I've experienced it once and it was a lot of time and I've always frayed away from it. When I became aware of this program, it is truly, they charge us a fee to do it. And they go through all the legal matters, they get the visas, they do all the pre-recruiting. I was on their website today. there's a list of over 200 teachers who want to come to the United States. And so I see it as a great talent that we can do. And when we talk about foreign teachers, I know it gets a little nervous because they're, out of the country, trying to interview them. What's really neat about their interface is you can go through, you can sort by math teachers, science teachers, you can look at their credentials, you can look at their application, you can click on a video that has already had like a pre-interview, and you can see them answering questions to the 8 questions that are already standard. If our principals are interested in them, they click on an interview button, they get their interview team together, and they interview the teacher right through that portal. Should the principal and the team find that is somebody that they would like, then we submit the paperwork to the company and pay the fee, and they're ready to go within about 45 days. Unfortunately, school is less than 45 days from now, but again, if we find somebody who is worthwhile, then we will certainly do it upon your approval. The cost is actually a savings. Because these candidates, they can be here for up to 5 years, they do not qualify for state retirement. So we don't have to pay state retirement. The other savings, and through this agreement, is we pay up to $3,000 for their health insurance. We pay more than that for each one of our employees. So with the savings of state retirement that we don't have to pay, through the savings of the health insurance, we actually save per year about $2,000. Once we pay their fee and we pay them $3,000. So it's actually a savings to us. They become our employees. We pay them what we normally would pay, anybody else. We look at their years of experience. And so really it's a win-win. And this is not, again, a program we're just going to start getting a bunch of teachers coming in. They have to be fully vetted. They have to be interviewed. Principals still have to do the reference checks. And I think our principals do a good job at that. And so with this time, I thought, it was appropriate to look at this and really look into this deeper and figure out if something that this would be appropriate. If we find nobody that we want to hire, we pay nothing. So with your approval, should we not find anybody that we like, it is really no harm, no foul. Teachers can be here up to 3 years and they can get an extension for 2 years. Again, the company handles all of that with the visas. We just treat them like our own employees if they were in our own backyard. So I'm very excited. I saw a lot of neat, potential, energetic candidates online today. And so with your approval, I'm very excited if it goes through, and again, just gives us another tool in the toolbox.
Scott, I'm just curious, do these people come from like all over the world? Is it?
They recruit all over the world, but they really focus on Spanish-speaking countries because it's the close dialect to English. Now, there was some from Philippines and whatnot, but they really try to focus on Spanish-speaking countries because I think the dialect in their language is a little bit easier to learn English. When I went on the videos today, some of them had accents, but everyone that I just randomly clicked on spoke very good English. It was almost just looking at a normal interview. So I think there's going to be some really great potential candidates in there.
And before making the recommendation, I would only just stress again that this is not the new default position. In the continuum of recourse and options, this is an option that we make available that's probably a little bit down the line of how you would normally go through. Nothing changes in the normal scope of things. This just gives you another door to walk through to look when you're looking for that highly skilled mathematics teacher in the high school level, or that very specialized teacher, specialist in some area. And so for the reasons that were mentioned, as Scott did mention, our attorney Gary Ehrman did review the agreement. And as Scott also said, it doesn't obligate us to do anything. If we don't find anybody, we don't have a quota or anything like that, or a standing fee. You pay for what you use. So I think it's a win-win for us. And at this point, I would recommend the board's approval of the agreement with the International Alliance Group LLC host school program.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just wanted to say thank you. It looks like a really good program, and I think combined with the shortage of teachers and being so close to the border and just any opportunity for diversity in our schools and the kids to have access to people with such unique cultural backgrounds that they might not have been exposed to without this program. I think it has the potential to be a really great thing for everyone.
Anything else?
I know there's difficulties all around the globe finding qualified resources for whatever. I just happened to look at my company's website. We have 5,001 openings at our company right now. So any other tool that we have, I definitely encourage the leveraging of it.
And I just want to make sure, clarify, I think it was clear, but I just want to make sure it's stated. This doesn't obligate us to hire any. It allows us to hire if we wish. And it will be used as another resource pool as needed and necessary to complete staffing to accommodate the needs that we have.
Your statement is 100% accurate, Dr. Sparks.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Moving on, new business personnel, the 301 performance plan. Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board and public. Again, Prop 301, this is nothing new. The law, I think, has been, this is a voter approved initiative that was approved in the early 2000s, I believe. And it's a sales tax. I think it's 0.6 cents of a sale. And it's entirely designed to support education and significantly to enhance and improve the compensation of teachers with some modifications or exceptions. It is something that has to be approved every year. My few comments before I ask Mr. Downs to add his 2 cents is this board, and by that I mean the people that have sat behind this dais more recently and even more distant in time, as long as I've been here, the board has always been of like vision that the goal is to support teachers and to provide as much in support of their compensation as possible. There's basically 3 buckets. There's part that goes in salary, that's part that's called the menu that you can choose to put in salary. Our board always has. And then there's this performance component where teachers have to complete certain metrics and outcomes to qualify for that performance piece. So, Mr. Downs, could you please provide some specific details and feedback?
Yep, thank you, Dr. Valenzuela. The plan before you is exactly the one that we had last year, so there's no change. But just to go over some of the fine details of it, as Dr. Valenzuela alluded to, our teachers receive a minimum of $6,500 approximately for 301 money. One component of that, which is $2,700 for every teacher, is the performance plan. If they are successful on the performance plan, they get the $2,700 in June. There are 5 sections of the plan, just to go through them quickly. First one is they have to have a good evaluation. They have to be performing or highly performing. Anybody that's on a performance plan does not get paid. The second one is they have to have a professional growth goal. They have to work on some type of focused academic standard for kids, and I believe it's the same as we had last year. Another one is district-wide. We have to maintain a percentage dropout rate, so we can't have kids dropping out. We have to maintain a certain attendance rate district-wide, and we have to make sure that we are making sure that we have parent and student survey information, and that is all by state statute. There are certain things that you have to have in your plan, and we meet all of those criteria. And so with that, I can answer any questions, but it's the exact same plan as last year. And I think the teachers appreciate the plan. I think it's a meaningful plan. And I recommend the approval to Dr. Valenzuela.
And at this point, I do recommend the board's approval of the 301, Prop 301 performance plan for the fiscal year 22-23.
We have a recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
I just had a quick question. The dropout rate and attendance rates, that part, is it, I know we had temporarily lifted it during COVID because obviously the kids weren't in the seats.
Mm-hmm.
And is this something that remains on here because it is beneficial in getting teachers
Yeah, I think
the additional funds?
Yeah, 2 parts to your question. One, we felt that it was appropriate to have, bring back the dropout rates and attendance rate. You were right. We had asked for a waiver on that because of COVID. Even bringing it back this last year, although it seems that we have to have an attendance rate of 90% or better. I think we were at like 94%, 96% because through a lot of Mr. Bonner's hard work and working with Laura Blanca on our power school and taking attendance while kids were at home, we meet and exceeded what our goal was. And I do believe, yes, the 301 plan is imperative to teachers. It helps, compensate them for the things that they do, because we all know we don't pay teachers enough. So the 301 plan is just is a great tool to look at what we do, get better, and make sure that we're performing at where we are or where we should.
I guess but have we ever had an instance where the district-wide dropout rate or attendance rate ever stopped a teacher from?
No, we
Okay.
have never, and that's kind of something beyond their control because it's kind of a collective goal. And throughout the bottom three, which is what I accumulate the data on, we have never failed on those three goals.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, I think you said, they have to be a performing, employee. So if they're on a improvement plan, they don't get paid for that portion. That's 33% of the $2,700. So, it's not the whole $2,700.
Correct. They don't lose the whole thing.
They don't lose
yeah,
the $6,500. They lose just that.
Absolutely. You're absolutely correct.
That $900.
And then one other clarification, because, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it was my understanding that if a teacher was put on a performance plan and during their second evaluation, they've met or exceeded whatever the points were made, then they go back onto that and they do receive their money, correct?
The purpose of a plan of improvement for a teacher is to get better.
Exactly.
And if they're put on the plan and the principal feels like they've done everything they can, they've read the books, they've observed other teachers, they've got better at the lesson plan, then if by the end their ultimate scoring is the effective or highly effective, then they can qualify.
Okay, got it, perfect. All right, any other questions? I just have one final comment. I just really want to indicate I appreciate the district's dedication to developing this particular instrument that it's teacher focused. It has the ability to, with multiple pieces, and gives them an opportunity to really augment their income. And so I appreciate that very much. So, and it doesn't narrowly define success. Too often we're left in a situation of where success is so narrowly defined that it sort of becomes unattainable, and that's not in this case. And I truly appreciate that, having been a teacher at times of where that level was so narrowly defined. This is a much better situation.
Yeah, it was not designed to be punitive. It was designed to be meaningful and attainable.
Perfect. Thank you. If there's no more discussion, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Okay. Appointment of the Sahuarita Intermediate School Principal, Dr. Valenzuela.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, President Reese, members of the board and public. I think it stands intuitively to reason, and I can tell you that it's validated by a pretty fair body of empirical research on the principalship, that principal leadership matters. It's a critical factor, and it has a significant effect size, not only on student academic achievement, but on other important variables like the culture of the school, the feeling tone, the retention of teachers. And so, needless to say, whenever an opportunity presents itself where we are charged with selecting a candidate to be a school principal, we take it with great seriousness. And this was no exception. I want to thank Mr. Downs, Mr. Bonner, and Ms. Huey for the effort that they put into this entire process. When Miss Nido left us here earlier in the summer, this became a top priority, and a lot of time, a lot of effort, assembling, as always, a very diverse stakeholder committee that involved parents and support staff and administrators, principals, district staff, and a thoughtful screening process, very multifaceted interview process and evaluation process. It yielded, once again, very meaningful fruit. And I'm really excited about the future of Sahuarita Intermediate School. This evening, I'm going to be recommending to you the appointment of Mr. Luis Saenz to be the next principal at Sahuarita Intermediate School. And I just want to make a few comments. First of all, Mr. Saenz is a 16-year veteran professional educator. He is a highly respected educator among parents, among students, among his peers. His entire career has been here in the Sahuarita Unified School District. And not only that, his entire career has been teaching either 4th or 5th grade at Sahuarita Intermediate School. He bleeds Bobcat Blue. As a matter of fact, when I talk to him, the last part of this process is the committee makes a recommendation of 1 or 2 people to me, and I meet with them. So when I was meeting with Luis, one of the things that stuck with me is I knew that Luis was working on his graduate studies and working toward opportunities in leadership. But he told me something. He said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, but I'm almost quoting him. He said something like, I really wanted to be a principal, but even more, I really wanted to be the principal of Sahuarita Intermediate School. So he's vested. And during the time that he's been there, he's assumed multiple roles, including multiple leadership roles. Luis has been an instructional coach. He's been a professional development facilitator. He's been the designee for the principal in previous years. He's been a mentor. He's been a math coach. He's been on multiple curriculum initiatives, including beyond textbooks. He's received multiple honors. He's been the Sahuarita Intermediate School Teacher of the Year. He's been Sahuarita Unified School District Teacher of the Year representative to the state competition. He also was honored a couple years ago with the Esperanza Latino Teacher Award by Chicanos por la Causa, which is a statewide organization and a very special award. Mr. Saenz is a native Tucsonan, as I understand it. He earned his, so I think he graduated from Pueblo. Are you a Warrior? Did you graduate from Pueblo? Yes, Pueblo Warrior. He earned an Associate of Arts degree from Pima Community College, a Bachelor of Arts in Elementary Education from the University of Arizona, and most recently he earned his Master's of Education degree in Educational Administration from Grand Canyon University. So it's my pleasure to recommend the appointment of Luis Saenz as the next principal at Sahuarita Intermediate School.
So on behalf of the board, and I'm just going to espouse for a few minutes because I have had the absolute pleasure of seeing 2 of my own students flourish in your classroom. And I've also been a member of the SIS community for the last 7 years and have had the absolute pleasure of getting to know you a little bit, volunteering in your classroom, of just seeing the absolute leadership that you exude at that school. And I'm so excited to see this next chapter for you. I'm beyond words. Sometimes I'm almost teary here because I'm so excited for the school. I'm excited for the staff. I'm excited for the students, and most of all excited for you and your family as you get to start this next adventure. So congratulations.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve the nomination of Mr. Saenz to the principalship of Sahuarita Intermediate School.
Fantastic. Do we have a second?
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Congratulations.
Few words. If I may. I want to thank the school board, Dr. Valenzuela, Mr. Downs, Mr. Bonner, those that were in the hiring committee for giving me the opportunity to be the next principal at Sahuarita Intermediate School. I am truly honored. Like Dr. Valenzuela said, my ambition was to be principal when I first started. but it's a dream to be the principal at Sahuarita Intermediate. I've taught there 16 years, 5th grade, 4th grade, lots of roles trying to help, make sure the staff can deliver the best education for our students there and support. And being in the classroom for so many years, I'm aware of the hardships that teachers encounter, but I also experience the great satisfaction that our profession can give us in the classroom. I'm excited to be in this new role and to continue collaborating with teachers, staff, and parents to make SIS a great place to teach and to learn. I truly feel we are a Bobcat family. We support each other to become the best for our students. I take great pride in being part of this family, and I will do my best to help every student succeed. I could not have been here without the help of many people. First off, mis padres, who instilled the importance of education, and doing things the right way. Also, my wife Stephanie, who always believed in me and supported me through my bachelor's, my master's program. She did a lot while I was studying and reading and writing, and she was, holding down the house. She's always been my #1 fan. I couldn't have done it without her. I want to also acknowledge the master teachers that have helped me through my career here at Sahuarita Unified. First, Mike Lewis, who taught me how important it is. Sorry, he passed. He taught me how important it is to have heart in teaching. Mrs. Kim Atwell, she's a lot of fun. She was my first mentor, and she got me through a lot of those first years that were pretty tough as a teacher. And can't forget Mrs. Barton. She's a great team teacher. She's awesome. She's an amazing teacher, and she taught me to maybe think of the softer perspective of my personality. She's been a great help. And of course, Miss Clarissa Nido, who was the principal. She's been so supportive in my administrative journey. She placed a lot of trust in me to be the administrative intern and her principal designee. I will always be thankful to her for that. My goal is to collaborate with parents, students, and staff to provide for the students' educational needs. As a teacher, I have worked diligently to nurture a safe, encouraging, and positive classroom. And as the new SIS principal, I will continue to work with our Bobcat family to deliver a rich learning environment for our children. Thank you very much.
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I just wanted to applaud the Sahuarita Primary School PTO for their generous donation for the shade structure. Pretty impressive amount of money to provide that coverage. And we know how hot it gets here in Arizona.
Yes, sir.
It stays hot for a long time, and it's good that those kids are going to have some additional shade available.
Another great example of Sahuarita Wins and our Sahuarita Wins spirit.
And that one, I know that they're glad that they've got that one completed. So, any other discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Possible future agenda items, considerations. Is there any future agenda items anyone would like to recommend? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on. We are going to establish the next board meeting on August 10th, 2022, here at the Sahuarita District Auditorium. It will be in this building at time. And then there is no executive session tonight, so we need a motion for adjournments.
So moved.
Second.
Properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll proceed to vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion passes. Thank you so much and have a good evening.
Minutes.